YouTube channel. I wanted to come on today and do a video that was really dedicated to why I love the 60s and 70s so much. So, buckle your seatbelts, let's get started. And if you are new here, my name's Ashley. I am a lover of all things 60s and 70s, the style, the fashion, the film, the music, all of that in between, but not the values. So I just wanted to make that very, very clear. I just love that era. And the reason that I really started to fall in love with the 60s and 70s truly was because I kind of had a lot of life changes that happened in my life. This past year, it was kind of like a whirlwind, and I am in my 40s and I just felt myself not enjoying the things I used to enjoy. So my cup really wasn't getting filled, and I knew this was happening, but I just kept going and tried to see if I could kind of fill that void some way, somehow. And eventually that kind of caught up to me. And I realized I needed a life change. That really happened with the inspiration from my husband, kind of just cheering me on and letting me know that it's okay to have a life change, be yourself, and just embrace life and enjoy life. And I was forgetting that. I wasn't enjoying life anymore. I was just kind of working, 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 and that's all I knew. And I have him to thank for kind of making me realize that. It was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And so I decided to make a lot of life changes, and it started with just leaving a job that wasn't filling my cup anymore, to be honest. And that's really hard for me to say because I did enjoy that for so many years. But ultimately, at the end of the day, on the daily, it wasn't giving me what it used to give me, like that joy. And I didn't want to lose that joy. And I was seeing myself losing that joy really quickly. And so that was a big life change for me. And when I did that, I really didn't know where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And so it was kind of a point of like exploring and finding out like who really am I without my job? Like, because that was my, I guess, identity for a very long time. And at this job, I always had to wear black. Yes, I'm wearing black, but I'm also wearing like color, and I have on like some like bright type. So I'm not wearing all black. But that's kind of what I was known for is just my job. That was my identity, but also wearing like all black. And if you know me, I'm a pretty like spunky person. So um, it really didn't kind of make sense that I like always wore black and things like that. It did because of my job, but it also was like even outside of work, I was constantly wearing black. And again, it became my identity. And I had to look at that and be like, who is Ashley without this job? Because that really was something that was hard for me to realize. It's kind of crazy to think about. And I opened up my closet and just looked and saw all these black clothes and was like, hmm, like number one, I want to add color in my life. That was like the first thing I wanted to do. And number two, like, let me look at all these clothes and like the style that these clothes are and see like maybe I can kind of like find myself and find my style. And what I started to realize, and I'll put some pictures up, is a lot of like the silhouettes and the dresses, the pants, the shirts, they had a distinct style to them. And I was seeing that that style was very like mod from like the 60s, but also some 70s inspiration too, with like kind of like flowing like sleeves and like very like dagger shaped collars, things like that. And I did some research. I kind of sought out the internet a little bit to like see like what is my style, and I like all of these things and found that they match the 60s and 70s. And I started to immediately make Pinterest boards. Second thing I did was just check on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube just for people that would like inspire me in that area. And I found a lot on there. Found a lot of like clothing brands that I was like, wow, like they have really unique and cool 60s and 70s clothing. I found a lot of inspiration from different kind of, I guess, muses on the internet and YouTubers. And I was like, this is like making me so happy. And I started to like be happy again. Like just my cup started to be full of experiencing something that used to make experiencing something that just genuinely made me smile and made me excited about something again because it had been so long. And it's crazy because even as I started like the journey into like kind of 60s and 70s and vintage clothing, my husband's like, you've been so much happier. And it is truly, yes, I have. I'm not gonna lie. Like I have kind of like found like who I want to be, I guess, and who I am without that identity of my identity being my job. And so I started to like think, okay, I want to get some like vintage clothes. Like this is something that I want to explore now. And I started to get serious about it. So first thing I did was I really started to dive into like what is mod style and what does that look like? What timeline was that? You know, what is mod? And all of those things. And I started to research in the 70s and what was, really fashion in that era and where was fashion going. And I love that. And part of the reason I started a YouTube channel was to like explore all those things with you guys. Like, yes, I know some things, but when I'm doing some of the videos, I'm actually researching with you and just sharing what I learned. And I love that. That's why I started this channel. And as I started to kind of like explore more, I was like, okay, let's find where I can find these clothes locally. And I do want to support local. I don't want to really support any more like the quick fashion of like Shein and all those companies. Like I want to support local and I want to support, you know, small businesses, that are even like reusing fabric. And there's a couple that I follow that I absolutely love. And I want to definitely mention them because I think they're so great. And I'm so excited because I'm actually getting a some fabric scraps from them and I'm excited to kind of play with the scraps that I get and utilize them, but also I do want to get one of their dresses as well. So the one that I'm getting the scraps from is the Octopus Garden, and it's in the UK. I started following them, and I started following them. I love their clothing. I love what they stand for, and I'm just so excited to get some fabric in from them. So, yay! I can't wait to get that, and I'll definitely do a video on what I get and what I do with those fabric scraps because from what I've seen on their website, just what they reuse, these scraps and these fabrics are amazing. So I am so excited about that. And what I ended up doing is, yes, following all these different like websites and then supporting local. I had to look up what were local vintage shops and a lot came up. But my real like true love is like 60s and 70s. So that eliminated a lot of the shops because not many really kind of like focus on that. And so I kind of had this list that I like screenshotted everything. We got in the car and we went. And the first place we went was Flipside Collective. And I've mentioned them in my videos before. Amazing shop. Rachel, the owner, takes such good like care of her clothing. Like she mends it, she washes it. She spends like sometimes like weeks and weeks on one piece. And she truly loves it. And I love supporting her because I love that. I think that's so, so cool that she loves, the fashion and the clothing so much. And she's really cool. And I got my first vintage pieces at her shop. I got a dress, a shirt, and a pair of pants. And I'll kind of put up pictures of those. And that like gave me the biggest like high. I was so excited. I was addicted. I was like, need more vintage clothing, need to do this more. It's so, so fun because Yeah, you'll find a lot you like, but number one, vintage clothing fits very differently than like modern clothing. So you definitely have to try things on. And I have suffered from an eating disorder. I've been in recovery for a long time, but that gives me body dysmorphia when I am like looking at clothes. I think I'm bigger than I am. And sometimes I think I'm smaller than I am. So that can be really hard with vintage clothing. Sometimes can be very triggering. But I have to remember that vintage clothing is different. It all fits different. Some of it was homemade, so you can't expect it to like just fit you perfectly like some of the modern day clothes that you find. So I had to really understand that as I was getting into looking and trying on more vintage things, like that it's okay. And if you suffer from an eating disorder or you're in recovery, you just have to be mindful of that and, know that like the goal is to find clothes that like suit you and fit you. And that's the fun of finding vintage clothes is when it fits, it's like it fits you like a glove and you're like, okay, this is it. This is the piece. And I've found that happening more and more, and that's like exciting. And that's what makes it exciting. So when I found these pieces at her shop, that was it. It was like they fit me perfect. And I was like, okay, this is it. Like these are some of the clothes I like. And I found kind of what fabrics I like. I found what um type of like pants that I like. For example, I love the elastic, like polyester and cotton bell bottoms. I love those. I think they're super comfortable. I have two pairs of them and they fit me really, really well. And I like the way they look on me. They make me feel good. And I love certain cut dresses. I know what certain cut dresses that I like, I feel good in. And that has really helped a lot too. And it's helped my confidence too. So those were the first three pieces that I got. I then kind of like ventured to a antique mall, which has clothing too, and I've gotten a couple pieces from there. And that's when I started to kind of really dive into decor for the home. And when I first kind of like started this journey, it was more about like my style and clothing and things like that. But as I went to more vintage malls, I realized, my home kind of reflected my identity. And I said, I wore all black. And so my home was a lot of black and like kind of like not morbid, but it was like gothic. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I found with my how I wanted to express myself now with being more colorful, things more bright, that makes me happy. I wanted to add more color in my home. And just again went and dived into research, started a Pinterest board, started following people that had amazing like, 70s style like home decor and how bright the colors were and all the knickknacks. And again, I got excited. I was like, this is so great. And I then started when we would go to the vintage mall looking more at home decor, knickknacks, placemats, pictures, things like that. And slowly I'm starting to kind of revamp our home a little bit and make it happier, lighter with lots of color. And it's what makes us happy. It may not make other people happy, but it makes us happy. Adding colored curtains in the living room, it was like, oh, like this is so great. Like I am loving the lightness it brings into the room. And so that has been something we have started too, is just kind of going to, vintage malls. We also have gone to a vintage expo. We also have been to like Salvation Army, Goodwill, and there's a big difference. And if you want to know the difference between a vintage store and, a thrift store, there's a big difference there. There's an amazing video that is on the Flipside Collective's Instagram. That's great. That tells the difference, what is different between the two, because a lot of people interchange that. So you should check that video out if you really do want to know like the difference between the two. And I found great things at both. What I love about a vintage store though is that you get something that's usually like clean, it's mended and cared for. And I love that. And that's what you're paying for. When you go to a thrift store, you're getting it maybe that something that's been in someone's like attic for years. You may have to mend it. You may have to wash it. You may have to really like kind of do the work, which is fine. And I'm okay with that. So it just depends, for clothing, it is it's a two-way street. Like I've done both, but I do enjoy like supporting local and going to a vintage store like Flipside because I love that it's already mended. I don't have to go in and maybe do like damage control with washing it and all that stuff. I have an expert that does that, Rachel, at the store. So, for me, I like that. But I do find some cool stuff sometimes at, a thrift store. I found amazing like orange placemats. They were $1.99, four of them. They were crocheted. Love them. And I'll insert a picture. But, that's not always, you're not always going to find things at a thrift store. Like more times than none, you're going to go in and leave with nothing. It's a very much like a looking game. And, I love doing that, but sometimes it's nice to go to a place that has just like the vintage stuff, like a vintage store. So that's my little rant on that. Um, and I've explored more stores, out there in Tulsa. Harrington Rose is a really great one. I found a really like super dreamy dress. It is what I call my daydream believer dress. It just reminds me of that song. It's got some fabulous colors on it. It's just the coolest dress ever. And I'll insert a picture. So that is a really great one. And she has a lot of variety. She has a lot of denim, which is great. And if you need some like vintage denim, she definitely has a lot of that as well. So I have kind of expanded my closet a lot with that. And the other thing that I actually really love is horror movies. I've always loved horror movies. It started when I was little, my dad showing me like Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein. So I have a special place in my heart for the Universal monsters. But what I really love is the 60s and 70s genre of horror. And I was like, oh my gosh, like let's connect these two. Like I love both, and I feel like that would be fun to talk about on YouTube. And so that really was what sparked the YouTube was the combination of my love for the 60s and 70s and like horror movies as well, and like combining the two with, everything in between. And it's been so fun to kind of explore the horror movies from the 60s and 70s, but also add in like the fashion because I think that's why I also love that genre of horror is because the fashion was just so good and I enjoy it. And so that sparked the YouTube. So that was a big kind of aha moment that, bring together the horror and the 60s and 70s. And I love that. I love that I can like bridge that together and add the fashion in as well. And the music. I've always loved music. I was a radio DJ when I was in my 20s. So for me, that was like kind of a given to add to the mix. And I definitely want to do a couple of maybe like a YouTube series on music. I don't know how I want to do that, but I think that would be extremely fun because there's so much good music in both of those decades and I have a lot to say about it. So I would love to do that. And I just love all of like the icons from the era. And I definitely will say my like style icon and when I started this new journey of kind of finding out who Ashley was in 60s and 70s, I is is kind of when I let go of my dark black hair. I had really, really dark black hair. I'll insert a picture. And I again was like, I need to like revamp. Like I'm not happy with this. And I cut my hair off and made it blonde. I was previously blonde and had short hair, so this wasn't anything new to me. But my style inspiration was like Twiggy. She is like the face of 66. She is the face of the 60s. And I think she had the coolest style. She was just, she's just the coolest. She is so rad. And yeah, she is kind of like my muse, my icon. There are so many others that I do post on my Instagram. I do like Icon Thursday. And so much inspiration there, so much, and such good humans, each of these like icons. Like I can't speak highly enough of them. And I'm like in the midst of reading all the books I can on them. So if you have any book recommendations, please drop that below. And ultimately, that's really what led me on this journey and why I love the 60s and 70s. It was something that it's something that makes me happy. It's something that made me realize, this is a new era for me. And I want to be happy and I want to be healthy and I want to have fun. And I feel like that shows in my wardrobe now. And I love that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the reason I love the 60s and 70s is because it's something that fills my cup. Both decades were decades of change, happiness, and finding your happiness, and iconic style and having fun with style and not really caring what people thought and like doing new things. And all of that I love. And it was showcased in music, it was showcased in movies, and of course in fashion. So that's why I love the 60s and 70s so much. It's something that, yes, I'm hyper fixated on right now, and I think I forever will be. And it just makes me happy. And I wanted to start to showcase that on social media and especially on YouTube to meet other people that feel the same way and connect with them and chat with them. And as you get older, it's harder to make friends. And so this is kind of like my way to make those friends. And I want to connect with all of you guys to be able to talk about, things that have happened in the 60s and 70s, the music, the film, the fashion, get inspiration from you. Get inspiration from you, all of that. And so that in a nutshell is why I love the 60s and 70s. And I'm excited to just do more research, find out more information about my favorite, films and music and the icons of that era and share it with you guys and also connect with you guys. So I just wanted to do the video on that because I think a lot of people wonder why. Like, why does she love the 60s and 70s so much? Or why all of a sudden did she stop wearing black and now she's wearing all these like 60s and 70s inspired looks? Well, that's why. It's a new era for me and an era of happiness and just doing things that I want to do and realizing that my job doesn't define me. I define me. And I love this era. And I'm excited for you to go along this journey with me.